It's wonderful to hear Aretha Franklin sing about freedom at a time when our freedoms seem to be in some peril. Most important is the freedom to vote. And I welcome you here today so that you can hear more about that. I see there are names that are not familiar to me. And so I don't know whether you're here for the first time. And if you are, very big welcome. And now, let's proceed.
Thank you so much, Carol. And let me join. I'm Therese Flaherty. I'm from Philadelphia and from the Elders for Sound Democracy and Elders Action Network. I'm going to be your host for today. And it is a privilege indeed, because we have two really important, valuable partners who are doing great work to enable us to make a difference and protect and promote the vote from people who might not always vote. I point out to you all that, surprise to me, maybe shouldn't have been, but it was, today is Constitution Day and Citizenship Day. This is the day that in 1787, the delegates to the Constitutional Convention signed the Constitution. And in 2004, Congress determined that this should also be Citizenship Day, a day when our important institutions have education to help us understand about citizenship and help us to exercise our responsibilities and our rights as citizens. So, an especially important day in a year when, at least for me, I feel that I am learning anew every day what that Constitution could mean and what are the important things I should be doing and wish I were doing more of, to help us really have and enjoy the rule of law and our common understanding of rights in a country where the governed have our consent. Having said that, I want to tell you a little bit about Elders Action Network and Elders for Sound Democracy. We do care a great deal about helping elders, helping each other figure out how to make a difference. In Elders for Sound Democracy, we are focused on making our democracy stronger and more effective for all citizens and safe for every human being within our within our borders and to the extent that we can within the world. We're especially interested in being nonpartisan. We are nonpartisan. That means we don't ever support a candidate or a political party, and you won't hear us do that. It doesn't mean that we don't believe in principles and issues. You will hear us address principles and issues. We are also nonpartisan because when it comes to encouraging people to vote, perhaps they haven't voted, they believe much more in messages that come from nonpartisan groups than partisan groups. So we believe we can be actually most effective as part of what we do as citizens. Nonpartisan work is extremely powerful. And we are very excited to do part of it, and especially to bring to you today two partner organizations of Elders Action Network. And one is, you'll hear more about in a moment, is the Environmental Voter Project. Very powerful, very clear about how impactful they have been in bringing reluctant voters to become super voters. And the Center for Common Ground, a wonderful organization that works to help especially African American citizens feel comfortable and empowered to vote and exercise their citizenship and their voices. They both make a big impact, they both measure their impact, and they make it easy for us from home to join them and amplify their efforts. As you know, we have election coming up in November, in most places, maybe not every place, but many, many places. Some of those elections are going to have national import, like the one in Virginia that Andrea will be telling us about, where almost all the state offices are up. Other elections will be more local. They might be school board elections, they might be mayoral elections, special elections. Um, they'll all benefit if people, more citizens, exercise their rights to think about the election and to do something about it. And the Environmental Voter Project is on the job all the time, everywhere, to make that happen. So you'll hear about those and you'll hear about opportunities to make a big difference. And in order to introduce you to that, I want to introduce you first to Leslie Wharton, who is the leader of the Elders Climate Action Organization, our sister organization, also nonpartisan, within Elders Action Network. Elders Climate Action is really what started Elders Action Network. A really important organization, and we're thrilled that Leslie and her team are here with us today. She's going to tell you more about them and that. Leslie? Over to you, Leslie.
Yeah, I got to remember to unmute myself. You know, we live on Zoom and that clicker, it's so important. So yes, thank you, Teresa. Elders Climate Action is thrilled to be co-sponsoring this session today. For those of you who aren't familiar with ECA, we got started in late 2014 when one of Elders Action Networks, our sort of parent founders, Paul Severance, attended Al Gore's climate reality training. He came back passionate about getting elders working on climate change. I mean, my God, we've got to deal with this. In 2015, ECA had engaged about 215 elders. That's the year I got involved. There was a gathering, in-person gathering in Washington, D.C., and I live across the border in Maryland. So I went, and I've been stuck ever since. But 10 years later, we have an outreach to over 30,000. Throughout, our mission has been to mobilize elders throughout the United States to address climate change while there is still time to protect the well-being of our grandchildren and future generations. We have teams of volunteers that focus on climate policy, educational programming, communications like our Elders in Action bulletins that we send out, the intersection of climate and health, and much more. And we have 12 active state chapters that are tackling climate issues at the state and local level through education, outreach to state officials, getting cities and counties to declare climate emergencies, and more. ECA has been in active partnership with the Environmental Voter Project since, I think, 2018. EVP allows us to reach out to registered voters who care a whole lot about the climate, but who rarely, if ever, vote in elections. You know, what's my vote going to count for, right? We have Elders Climate Action has members who engage regularly in phone banking sessions hosted by EVP, postcarding, and even door-to-door canvassing to get those non-voting voters to polls where we hope they'll vote from their climate-caring hearts. In fact, this month, ECA members are canvassing in Virginia and in Pennsylvania. I didn't keep a count, but I've done more than 200 postcards in the last 12 months, and I'm about to pick up another bundle from our Maryland, one of our Maryland chapter leaders. She got 500, and I'm going to pick up 100 of those, and I'm going to start writing. So it's been a real way to be engaged. And again, all of us elders can do it, you know, from the comfort of your home, your desk, your chair. You know, except for the canvassing, but then that's when you get out and get to take a walk and chat with people. So today we are thrilled to have Shannon Siegel from the Environmental Voter Project. I've met Shannon on Zoom calls many times. Just quickly, she's EVP's organizing and field director. She has a BA in Environmental Studies in Spanish from Mount Holyoke College. And in fact, she led the multi-stakeholder effort to create and adopt Mount Holyoke's first sustainability plan and set an ambitious carbon neutrality goal. So she's been engaged in this for a long time. And she has years of experience organizing coalitions for climate justice, fossil fuel divestment, including some community-based projects in Costa Rica. So I'm not going to try to give you more of her background. I'm going to turn it over to Shannon and let her tell you what's important for all of us to hear. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Leslie. Thank you to all of you joining, for inviting me to speak. I see many names and faces that I recognize, as well as some new ones. So for those of you that already know what we do at EVP and are experts, I promise I'm going to have some new stuff near the end here. But I want to make sure we can give everybody a quick run through. And if folks have questions, feel free to send those in the chat and I can be answering them afterwards as well. So I'm the organizing and field director at EVP. I've been on staff since January 2020, but I know, again, our involvement with EVP with ECA even predates that. So I'm super excited to have you all, those that have been on the train, those that are getting on the train here. We've got work to do. So at EVP, we do one thing, and we try to do it exceptionally well, and that's turn non-voting environmentalists into consistent voters. Why are we doing that? Well, we got a lot of climate voters that are not turning out to vote. I know this probably sounds surprising to many of you who probably are very good climate voters, but our data shows that 11.2 million registered eligible voters who would say climate or the environment is their #1 priority did not vote in the 2024 presidential general election. A lot of people. And it's especially a lot of people in certain states. I know we have folks, I think maybe from all 5 of these states on the call right now. We are a nonpartisan organization, just like EAN, just like ECA. But this is our latest big election, right? The presidential election in 2024. Non-voting environmentalists, so registered eligible voters who did not vote, who care about climate, that's what these green bars are. In each of these locations, minus Nevada, this is over 250,000 people. And these red bars reflect the margin of victory in that state in the 2024 general election. Now, I can't tell you who these voters in the green bars would have voted for. That is secret information. We all saw exit polling is not always even the most reliable, so I can't promise you who they would have voted for, but I can feel very confident that they would vote for who they believed was the strongest environmental candidate. So this just shows you if we could get even a fraction of these registered to vote environmentalists voting in presidential elections, and better yet, in all their elections, this would be more than enough people to jump on the radar and say, hey, pay attention to us. Pay attention to the things that we care about. We're going to vote for people that are leaders on climate and environment. So we don't try to elect certain candidates. Just as I mentioned, we're nonpartisan. We don't talk about candidates, policies, parties, issues. Instead, we're just finding the right people, the people who care a lot about climate, and we're getting them to vote more. The secret is that's a lot easier than trying to change anybody's mind. I'm sure you all have been in conversations with folks trying to get them to care more about climate or get them to vote for your candidate. Pretty hard to persuade someone, especially these days. What is easy is getting them to start a new habit, getting folks to vote, comparatively easy. So we do this with an electorate building approach. So we identify these low propensity environmental voters, so people registered to vote, eligible to vote, don't vote consistently. We find those folks based on their voting record. So we got their voter registration information. We mobilize them with proven voter turnout messaging, with door-to-door canvassing, calls, postcards. Those are our volunteer options. as well as direct mail and digital ads. And we talk to these voters for every election. I'm talking to you right now, September 2025. We have already mobilized voters in hundreds of elections so far this year. And we do that because you can't build a habit by only doing something every 2 or 4 years. I'll tell you, I wouldn't say I have the habit of going to the gym. I might do it once every 4 years. Wouldn't say I'm a great athlete, right? So just the same with being a voter. If you only do it every couple of years, you're not going to make it part of your identity, or it's not going to be a habit for you. So we want to get these folks exercising their right to vote every time they can. And that's how we're going to change the electorate over time. Rather than working on the supply side and saying, how do we get better candidates? We're focusing on the demand side. How do we get the right voters to vote and then demand what they need? There's a lot of great organizations that do endorsements and candidate work. So we don't really feel like we need to throw our hat in the ring on that. Groups are already doing that well. We are just helping supply the right voters. So here's an example of our EVP messaging. I took this off of our Virginia script that we are using to call voters this Friday. So if you join us to call voters on Friday, this is what you're going to read. You identify yourself as a volunteer with the Environmental Voter Project. We have data that suggests that just saying you're a volunteer or writing it in a postcard increases that person's likelihood of wanting to listen to you, right? You're not getting paid for it. This isn't just your job. You're doing this because you care that much about it, that you're volunteering your time to talk to this person. We tell them about the election, and we tell them that early voting is happening. Of course, we only do that in places where early voting is happening. So on Friday, it starts in Virginia. So we're going to say early voting is happening now. What that shows is that you can already take action. It's kind of like saying election day is today. You can hang up the phone and get right out to vote or to request your mail-in ballot. We're making it urgent. Then we implement plan making. I'm sure any of you who've done voter outreach before in any capacity are familiar with this. We call it kind of choice architecture. So instead of saying, will you vote? Is the answers to that or yes or no? We say, will you be voting early by ballot drop-off, by mail, or on election day? Again, these options will reflect what's available to that voter at that time. But you'll notice saying I'm not voting is not really an easy answer here. That was not one of the choices that we provided. Of course, some people still say it, but what we're really doing is getting unlikely voters to just pick. We're getting them to pick whichever one sounds most appealing to them. And then we use norm enforcement. So we get them on the record basically saying, you're going to vote early? Awesome. Let me give you the information for voting early. So it's getting them to vocalize that promise, that commitment out loud. And even though you were probably a stranger to this voter, the fact that they said it out loud and then you gave them the information increases their likelihood of following through on that plan. So you can see, even though this looks really simple and really easy to say, there's a lot of data backing up basically each word of this message so that when you're talking to voters, you have a roadmap of exactly what to say. So for more information, you can check out our website. We have a lot more details there. Oops. And now I'm going to just quickly run through our results. So this year in 2025, we are targeting 7 million voters in 21 states. So these are the 21 states where we have the highest proportions of these low propensity environmental voters. For example, like you'll see Wisconsin's not on here. That's not because Wisconsin's not important. There just are very few non-voting environmentalists there. We are not the best organization at this time to be working in Wisconsin. We can promise that your time and energy will be well spent in these target states where these environmentalists are making up significant proportions of the electorate. And we have the data to back it up. So we run randomized controlled trials where we measure the impact of our turnout on a treatment group, so low propensity environmental voters who we contact, and a group of low propensity environmental voters who we don't contact, a control group. 2021, this was the last odd year after presidential, we had results as high as 4% increases in turnout. That was in Nebraska in 2021, 3.9% in a Florida local election. 2022, so these were statewide. We had some midterm elections that we saw really, really strong results in, as well as more local elections. 2023, our last odd year. In Pennsylvania, we measured results up to 5.7% increases in turnout of our treatment versus our control. And I can tell you right now, this was in a location where we did calls, canvassing, and postcards, as well as other non-volunteer options. So we combined them all together and saw these incredible results. And then 2024, the presidential election, that's fresh on all of our minds. We still had statistically significant increases in turnout in a few different locations, as well as in other statewide and local elections. But the fact that we could see turnout in that really crowded field indicates to us that we're doing the right thing. We just need to be doing it more. We need to be scaling up, more volunteers, more money, more investment of time. And these 1.8, 0.5, 0.4, 0.7 could really, really scale by the time we have our next presidential. Now, this number is not a statistically rigorous number, but this is what we call our graduates. So since we got started about 10 years ago, we have contacted over 12 million unique low propensity environmental voters. These people were bad enough voters that they got on our list in the first place. Now, over 2 million of them have become consistent super voters. They are now voting in every single election. And I mean it when I say that. I mean local, state, federal, special, runoff. They have not missed an election. So we got a lot of room to grow, right? We have about 10 million more people we're still trying to track down, but these are all folks that have consistently kept their voting record up. If they slip up and miss an election, we're going to start contacting them again. That number is one lower. This does actually fluctuate over time. But you can see how in certain states, especially really tight swing states, over 100,000 people in Arizona are now super environmental voters. In Pennsylvania, that's 383,000. We got a lot more results on our website, but this is what we're up to for the rest of this year. This is where we need your help. This is just a sample. We're contacting voters in about 9 states this fall. But we have volunteer opportunities in these kind of especially high impact elections. Public Service Commissioner in Georgia, Mecklenburg County, North Carolina, that's where Charlotte is. There's a really important public transit ballot measure on the ballot. That's an example of, it's going to be probably a pretty low turnout election. This is one folks are not paying a lot of attention to, and we're trying to get folks out the door. New Jersey gubernatorial, Virginia gubernatorial, New York City mayor, Pennsylvania Supreme Court, as well as Pittsburgh mayor. We have phone banks, postcards, and canvassing in many of these states. I'll say our postcarding programs are already underway. As you heard, we've already distributed those, so we're not taking new signups. We are taking new signups for our phone banks and our postcards. So on Friday is our general election kickoff. This is when early voting starts in Virginia. Join us for a phone bank. Let's mobilize some voters to vote on the very first day that they can do it. We can get them to vote on Friday. I don't have to ask you to contact them again. We don't have to waste our time talking to that person again before November. We're going to get them out. Canvass with us. We're canvassing in Pittsburgh, Philadelphia, and in Arlington, Virginia. Specifically, this September 27th canvass is partnered with ECA's Virginia chapter. Gary's going to be leading that off, so we'd especially love to see you at that one if you're local to the Arlington area. And we have Get Out the Vote phone banks happening all day for the last 5 days of the election. We're excited that Bill will be joining us, Bill McKibben, on our kickoff shift. But if you're looking at your schedule and you're like, I'm not free at any of those 3 times, I feel confident you're free one of these days. This is what our website looks like right now. I invite you to find a time that works for your schedule. Better yet, many of these are consistent, like every Tuesday at noon. If that works for you, sign up for all the Tuesdays at noon. So we would really love for you all to join us and to make a difference. So I'll answer some questions in the chat, and we'll have some Q&A near the end as well. But thank you all for paying attention, for getting involved, and I'm excited for you all to hear what Center for Common Ground is doing, especially in Virginia as well.
Thank you so much, Shannon. Do put your clarifying questions in the chat and any of your more expansive questions, and we'll come back after we've heard from Andrew and Miller about the Center for Common Ground and what they're doing this election season. I want to spend a moment introducing Andrea and the Center. The Center for Common Ground, of course, if you're not familiar with it, and I'll tell you, I've only learned about them in the last couple years. We've been doing postcarding in the last election with them. I know some of my friends in the UU organization have been supporting writing postcards and doing phone banking with the Center for Common Ground a little bit more, a little bit longer. But we have elders and concerned elders from across the country participating in helping Andrea get especially African American voters who haven't always voted, helping to get them to vote. As I understand it, we help give those people, again, targeted, identified by Andrea as people who haven't necessarily been voting regularly. And we give them the information Andrea and her team tell us they might need to figure out how to get a ride to the polls, figure out exactly who's running or what the ballot might look like. And so it feels like a very valuable thing to do. And Andrea is going to explain to us what it is her organization is doing, how impactful when she's measured it, the kinds of things we're thinking of doing and inviting you to do with us and with the Center for Common Ground. I want to let you know that Andrea is one of the founders of the Center for Common Ground, and also that she's had quite a long career originally, as I understand it, and Andrea can correct me, in Democratic politics and congressional work and in Virginia and especially around the DC area. But for quite a while now, she's been working in activism for equal rights, for climate, and for voting rights. And a few years ago, she's one of the founding board members of the Center for Common Ground. And she's also the executive director of People Demanding Action and the funding president of the National Women's Political Caucus of Virginia. Andrea is going to explain all the things. She has 62 years. You look young, Andrea, working on the ERA, the Equal Rights Amendment. And please expand on the many things that I might not have mentioned, Andrea, about where you're coming from, and then tell us about the Center for Common Ground, what you're trying to do, and how we can get involved to help you.
Thank you so much for that marvelous introduction, Teresa. I'm originally born and raised in Chicago into a political family. I had two uncles who were aldermen in the Daily Machine. So I was born into politics. I grew up watching my uncles turn out the black vote in Chicago. So I'm just going back to my roots. So yes, we did found the Center for Common Ground in 2018. And strangely enough, like the Environmental Voter Project, we do get out the vote as a C3, even though People Demanding Action is our 501c4 arm. And we created and endorsed NC4 in 2020 National Women's Political Caucus because we saw how when men ran for office, they got money. When women ran for office, they got stupid comments like, why are you running for office? So we founded an organization that supports women. And you will get to see in my slides that has been very, very successful in Virginia. So welcome to Virginia in 2025. There's a sign whenever you cross the Virginia state line that says Virginia is for lovers. I think at the end of this election, we're going to need to change that sign and say Virginia is for women. Now, we have a number of projects at Center for Common Ground. The one that most people are familiar with is our Reclaim Our Vote campaign. We also have an internship program, Students for Voting Justice. We have a Democracy Center program, and that's what the image is on the upper right. You see a group of folks standing by solar panels. This image was from an article entitled Water from Heaven. They were making clean, safe drinking water from solar. So a good part of my activism has been in the environmental justice space. And again, I worked all those years on the Equal Rights Amendment. One of my board members runs Vote Equality. That was the organization that got Virginia to be the 38th state to ratify the Equal Rights Amendment. So we do some interesting things. Our mission is very simple. We want to empower underrepresented voters in voter suppression states to do two things. Number one, we want them to be able to vote. Number two, we want to teach them to advocate for their right to vote. And the whole idea is that together we can build a democracy that prioritizes the voices of all people. And my father is from Mississippi, and in Mississippi, they have a saying, all means all, y'all. Now, what are we doing in Virginia in 2025? This is our primary work, Virginia. Now, we do have people in Georgia. They are working on the Georgia municipals, and we've got people in North Carolina. They are working on the North Carolina municipals. But for me, who lives in Virginia, and the organization as a whole, we are pushing in Virginia. Now, we have statewide offices, governor, lieutenant governor, and attorney general. All 100 members of the House of Delegates are up for election this year. And early voting starts on Friday because Virginia has the Virginia Voter Bill of Rights. And so we have 45 days of early voting. We have voter registration during early voting and on election day. Now, remember I said we're going to need to change our sign. Virginia is for women. This is what the House of Delegates looks like. Right now, there are 29 incumbent women running for the House of Delegates. 25 are Democrats, 4 are women, 4 are Republican. There are 44 challengers, 31 Democratic challengers, 13 Republicans. And we have 26 candidates who have never run for office before. 18 on the Democratic side and 8 on the Republican side, giving us a total of 73 women candidates running for 100 seats. Isn't that amazing? Now, Virginia is going to make history in 2025 because Virginia is going to elect her first woman governor. It will either be Winsome Earl Sears, who's running on the Republican ticket, or Abigail Spanberger, who is running on the Democratic ticket. Now, one of the things I love about Virginia is we have a website, the Virginia Public Access Project, and that tracks campaign finance, because another one of my issues is money in politics. So not only do I look at, all right, how much money did you raise? I also look at, and who gave you that money? On the lieutenant governor's side, again, we're going to make history. John Reed, the Republican, is a gay man. When elected, or if elected, he would be our first openly gay lieutenant governor. Ghazala Hashmi would be our first Muslim woman lieutenant governor. So again, we are making history all around in the 2025 election. And then for Attorney General, Jason Miyares is the Republican candidate. He is also the incumbent, and the Democrat running against him is Jay Jones. So again, it is a fascinating scenario. Now, how do we run elections? What do we do that's different? First of all, because we are working primarily to turn out the Black vote because the language is English, we have 15 democracy centers. There is one in New York, one in South Carolina. There are 7 in Virginia, 3 in Alabama, and 2 in Georgia. What's a democracy center? Well, it is normally located in a low income area in a particular city or county where the voter turnout has been exceptionally low. Now, democracy centers do something very, very special. They work with members of the community and they help empower them. They talk to them and they find out what is important to them. And as long as that is not involved passing a piece of legislation, they help them achieve those goals. Several of our democracy centers run year-round feeding programs. One of our democracy centers builds homes for people who were formerly homeless. Our New York Democracy Center built indoor local gardens so that residents of Amsterdam House, the public housing project right behind Lincoln Center, could have fresh produce without getting on public transportation and riding for 20 minutes to get to an area where they could afford to buy produce. So whatever it is that the community needs, that is what democracy centers do year round. We believe that you have to earn the right to ask someone to vote. Don't know what, too many hand motions. This year, one of the new things that we've introduced is we are teaching civics. One of the things that I realized years ago is we stopped teaching civics decades ago. And part of that was that if people don't know how government is supposed to work, then they won't know when government is not working as intended. So we have been building civics courses. I built the federal course, and we are building state versions of the courses for all the states where we have democracy centers. I spent 10 years on Capitol Hill from 2009 to 2019. And I was predominantly a lobbyist on the federal budget, probably from 2017 to 2019. So one of the things that I'm doing is I'm taking my knowledge and understanding of how federal budgets work, and I am building presentations that dissect HR1, the big, beautiful slash fugly bill with F being whatever you want it to be, and making it so that regular people can understand what it does. And this one slide kind of tells the whole story. 813 billionaires are sharing $24.8 billion in total tax savings. 24 million millionaires are sharing $12.3 billion, and 342 million people, i.e., the rest of us, are sharing $6 billion. So it is the most obscene legal transfer of wealth we have ever seen in this country. Now, the general election. November 4th, early voting starts on Friday. Statewide, governor, lieutenant governor, attorneys general, all 100 seats are up. Now, this is very interesting for Virginia. There are Democrats running in all 100 districts. My mentor is over 100 years old. He does not even remember the last time the Democrats had a candidate for every district. And he remembers the names of people that he went to high school with. Okay, so it's not like he's 100 and his memory is failing. No, his memory is amazing. There are 77 Republicans that are running. And right now, the way the Virginia House is split, it's 51 Dems, 49 GOP. Now, we write postcards and we know our audience. So our postcards have been designed to inspire the African American community, to remind people we are strong, we are resilient, we are beautiful. So those are some of our postcards. And this year, because there is a deliberate attempt to trick Black voters, running a Black female candidate going, well, if we put up Black candidates, Black people will automatically go and vote. We are writing all 878,000 Black voters. There are now 894,000 registered Black voters, thanks to some very aggressive voter registrations that people have been doing. Our script is very powerful. The woman who wrote it was rather pissed off, and you can kind of hear it in her language. November 4th, choose Virginia leaders you can trust. Protect healthcare, housing, food, education, civil rights, and our Black history. Vote. So 3 action words: choose, protect, vote. Now, this is our new postcard where we're kind of looking at, all right, now we are protecting democracy, but we are still a beautiful and powerful people. Our future, our democracy, no autocracy, no oligarchy, no dictatorship. Now, how impactful are our postcards? They're very, very impactful. Now, in Georgia, this is numbers from 2024. We saw a 3.6% increase in turnout. And again, we were working with Black voters who pretty much had stopped voting. And the same thing in 2024 for Virginia. We saw an 8.2% increase in voter turnout. In 2023, we saw a 5.8% voter turnout in Petersburg, Virginia, where the only contact those voters got was a postcard because we didn't have phone numbers. We run phone banks every Tuesday and Thursday where there's a trainer there. So we invite you to phone bank with us every Tuesday and Thursday from 6 to 8 p.m. Eastern. Now, our phone banks run 7 days a week from 9 a.m. to 8 p.m. But on Tuesdays and Thursdays, the trainer is on Zoom. Normally, it's our IT director, who is incredibly patient, by the way. We invested in a power dollar this year we leave messages, because what we found with our phone banks is that when we have a conversation with voters, it can result in a 17.3% increase in turnout. If all we do is leave a voicemail, that's a 5.9% increase in turnout. We're different. For our phone banks, for every county that we're going to call, we have looked up every early voting location that there is. We've got the name, we've got the address, and we've got the date and times that they're open, and we've got the registrar's phone number. So that is the information that we are providing to voters. We also now are doing canvassing. So we remind voters why they're voting. And again, the issues that are on our canvassing materials, are on our postcards, are on our phone banks, are the issues that come from voters. So there's a part right on the very front where it says why I'm voting. Oh, I'm voting to create affordable housing, expand voting rights, get affordable health care, protect public education, end gun violence, and protect women's rights, because that is what they wanted to say in Brunswick County. We have the Brunswick registrar, the location of where their early voting location is, information on election day, and then a QR code for them to check their voter registration. And for older voters who are like, what is that weird looking thing? We give them the website, because we know our voters and we know what they need. So thank you very much. We will drop those links in the chat for you as to where and how you can join our phone banks and postcards. So we are sending and mailing postcards right now. So now you have to use our postcards. There's the link to postcards, and I will get our mobilized link in so that you can sign up for phone banks. And during our Q&A period, I will be thrilled to answer questions.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Andrea. And thank you, Shannon. I want to take a quick perusal. I know the chat has been very active. So let me read a couple of these questions to start with, and then we'll let some of our people who maybe haven't put it in the chat loose on questions. So one of our early questions comes from Leslie Wharton, which Shannon, you might have answered. But her question was, for the targeted non-voters, do you have numbers, and it should be to both of you, on how many might not vote in every election, but perhaps in national elections? Is the number higher than the 2 million, for example, that the EVP counted in the last election? Shannon, do you want to take that first?
Yeah, very good question, because of course, presidential elections are highest turnout. So we would expect the fewest people to be unlikely to vote. So kind of scary that 2 million is our low number. So for 2025, that 2 million is across, or the 11 million is across the entire country. And we contacted 2 million of them last year. For 2025, the number I have only is like in our target locations, because that's where we've done the analysis of who has 2025 elections. But we're targeting about 7 million low propensity environmental voters this year. So again, that's across just 21 states. 7 million people meet that criteria of registered to vote, highly likely to say climate or environment is their top issue, but unlikely to vote in a 2025 election. So like in Virginia, that's people unlikely to vote in a gubernatorial. In other places that just have a mayoral, it would be people unlikely to vote in that type of election.
Right. Thank you. And I think, Andrea, you said that because the Virginia election is so big in Virginia and important to Black people, you are targeting every person in the state, every Black person in the state.
Are targeting every Black voter in the state. And now, because Virginia has an election every year, on even numbered years, it's federal elections. And exactly like Shannon said, the highest turnout is for a federal election. Then the next highest turnout for us in Virginia would be a midterm election. And then when we get to odd numbered years, state elections, the highest turnout for a state election, sometimes it's almost as high as a midterm would be when there are statewide races on the ballot, our gubernatorial election, and our lowest turnout elections would be technically what you might call our state midterm elections.
Great, thank you. Now, Beverly asked a question, which Shannon answered in the chat, but I think we should all hear her answer. Beverly said, I used to text with Environmental Voter Project, but that changed a few years ago. Now it seems I'm not allowed to text anymore, but I am texting some voters through Field Team 6. So what's okay? What isn't? Why are we texting? Where are we texting? Shannon, can you explain?
I can. I'm gonna lead with the disclaimer. I'm not a lawyer. I'm not the lawyer for any of these other groups. But at EVP, we received like new texting restrictions that came online in 2021 called 10DLC. That means 10-digit long code. So that's like when you get a text from what looks like a full phone number, and those texts go through like apps, usually like Hustle or Skill to Win. Like I think many of you have probably used those. So these restrictions mean that to be compliant, you can only text people who you have a record that they have opted into receiving a text message from you. So like EVP will text our volunteers when that volunteer has checked the box saying, I consent to you texting me. For the millions of voters that we're targeting, we don't have that opt-in. We don't have any way to say that we had that opt-in, and you do have to provide documentation when it's requested. And the flip side is huge fines. That could be a fine on every text message. So that could easily be millions. That could be more than our budget if we were to receive fines like that. So at EVP, we have put our texting program on hold since that time. And we do not plan to resume it unless these restrictions are adjusted so that you are not required to have an opt-in. So I'm not sure what other organizations are doing, but many either do have an opt-in from that person they're texting, or maybe their legal team is less concerned about some of the fines or restrictions.
Okay, thank you so much. Now, there's another great question, which I think is important to all of us because many of us on this call have been writing postcards, writing letters, making phone calls for the last few elections. And we see the data you share with us, and yet we're always wondering, does it really make a difference? The data is great, and we're also starting to see something Shannon has foreshadowed, and I think also Andrea is talking about, and some of the other organizations I see are saying we can make those outreaches more impactful by doing a follow-up. And I know what Shannon says is the Environmental Voter Project program is going to be telling us about their new strategies tonight and at their gala. So if we go to the link, which is in the chat, and register for the gala, even if we can't attend, we will be able to hear afterwards about their new strategies. And I will say I am really glad to see the organizations we partner with updating what you're doing every election cycle to make it more impactful. So can't wait to see what you're doing, and can't wait to be part of it.
I want to say something very quickly about
Yes,
Black
please.
voters. No one calls, texts, postcards Black voters. They just don't. So one of the things that we did going all the way back to 2017 when we were working in Alabama, and we called 10,000 Black voters in the Alabama Black Belt, is we asked them, this was the special election um, or US Senate. And 98% of the voters we called when we asked the question, has anyone contacted you about this election? 98% of the voters said no. We were calling Birmingham. We were calling Mobile. We were not just calling these backwater counties that no one had heard about. And what is sad to say is in 2024, 2025, nothing has changed at all. People, the party and candidates generally do not reach out to Black voters because they are inconsistent voters and they are not donors.
Right. Andrea, let me just say, make a comment and then ask a question that's a little bit farther down in the chat, but which I've asked you before. So comment is, your numbers on impact are way bigger than any other organization's numbers on impact.
Yes.
From
Yes.
postcards or letters. I mean, just 4 and 5 times bigger, which is to say that if we could be part of your outreach, we could have a really big impact. And
Yes.
you've just explained why, which is that other people don't contact Black voters. That may not be true in this year's gubernatorial election in Virginia, but we'll find out. What do you think there?
It's three different things. Number one, the outreach to Black voters. Number two, the message. What we are saying is what they have said to us is important. So we are repeating what they told us.
Right.
In other words, you, Black voter, have been heard. And the images on our postcards are a celebration of being Black. When we first started postcarding in 2019, before we developed our own line of postcards, people would send us postcards of their Great Dane wearing a flag hat. And we're like, this is the South that's culturally traumatizing when people when police would set the dogs on Black people. No. And then we would get the postcards with the sailboat. Oh, right. People in the hood have a plan to go sailing next week.
So now I'm going to give you the follow-up question, which I've asked once before, and I know Leslie has it in the chat later. And that is, let's suppose someone like me, white lady, clearly without a Southern accent, calls a Black woman or man in Virginia. How does it feel to them? I mean, it's obvious I'm not quite of your community. Can it be
Great.
helpful?
All right, now, who is trying to stop Black voters from voting? That would be white people. So I give an example. Let's imagine there's a county dance. Everybody knows where the dance is. Everybody knows when the dance is. But some people feel that they're not welcome and they're not invited. When you make those calls, you are inviting people to the dance, and the dance is democracy.
So it's actually part of the message that someone who sounds like me would make the call.
Yes, it is. It is encouraging. Yes.
Yes. Okay, thank you. I'm
Yes.
moving right through here. There's a lot of questions about voters who've left the voter rolls. either on their own or because someone threw them off. Do either of your organizations have a way to reach out to those disenfranchised voters, especially ones who voted before?
We actually work with voters who, if the election were held tomorrow, they could vote in it.
Okay.
Mainly because in our other states, North Carolina, South Carolina, Alabama, Georgia, the voters who are still registered, but who have stopped voting are in serious danger of being thrown off the voting rolls. So we prefer to be the fence, keep them from falling off, than the ambulance down in the valley. We pick them up and put them back on
Okay.
because the SAVE Act, I don't believe they're going to be able to pass it federally, but some states will be able to pass it. And in that case, voters who fall off the voter rolls will not be able to get back on. So we prefer to prevent the falling off in the first place.
Great. Shannon, do you want to comment on that as well?
Totally agree with what Andrea just said. Ultimately, we are only contacting people who are registered and eligible to vote. As someone mentioned in the chat, voter registration organizations are often able to do more on the line of when someone actually has been purged off the voter rolls. But all I'll add is when we know, like, obviously there's consistent if you don't vote however many years in a certain location, you might automatically be removed. But when states like in Georgia, they say, hey, we're going to do a huge voter purge in 3 weeks. Like when we can see that information and see like, oh, it's people who fit this criteria, we will put together campaigns to contact those voters. We did that in 2024 to say something like, hey, you're on the inactive voter list, and it's important that you vote in this election to preserve your voter registration status. Or for X reason, looks like you might be removed from the voter rolls. Here's what you need to do. So when we know that information, we do try to be proactive with it to, prevent folks from falling off. And I'll note a lot of what we include in that as well is a voter registration information for if that voter says, oh, well, I don't live in Georgia anymore. That's why I haven't voted in the last 6 elections. We'd say, great, here's the link to register to vote in your wherever you live now. Because that's a second piece. So that's not often, we don't know that that person has moved, but when we get that information, we'll give them information about how to make sure they are registered appropriately.
Wonderful. Thank you. So we have questions from Ken Barnes and from Catherine Hess that are taking a little bit different tack on the discussion here. And they're really asking Andrea especially, can you explain a little bit more about your civics courses? And Ken asks, what do you include about what federal legislation does and what the agencies are supposed to do? How long is your course? Consumer protection, clean air and water. There is so much. How long are your courses? How do you get this across? What's the most important message you're working with, Andrea?
Right. Now I wrote the federal civics course from the lens of a person who was a lobbyist on Capitol Hill. And I was going to need to apply pressure at the right point to move legislation forward. So it was written with that lens. So I cover what are the committees, what are the caucuses, who heads up the various committees, who heads up the caucuses. How does the bill get to the floor? Is there another way? What is a discharge petition? How do budgets happen? Because budgets were my specialty. And so that is what I cover in federal civics. It's as though you are planning on becoming an effective lobbyist.
And who is your audience? Is it just people who want to be lobbyists? Do you think we
No,
all should be
no,
effective
no.
lobbyists?
We actually run a monthly, um, the Zoom meeting with our partners at the Workers Circle, how to be an effective citizen lobbyist. So it doesn't matter. Again, we, the people, as individuals, have the right to go to our elected representatives and say, we want you to do X. Well, there's an effective way to do that where they might listen to you. And then there's just kind of a scattershot way where maybe people, you'll get someone's attention and maybe you won't.
Andrew, this is Ken. Could I just follow up on that for a second? That's a great approach about the lobbyist and how a citizen activist can effectively make things happen or not happen. But what I would suggest also weaving in there somehow is what these laws and agency regulations, agency enforcement activities mean in terms of helping the people, protecting consumers, keeping clean air and water, labor workers, working conditions, financial fraud, whatever it is, all of the things that government does to help people, and how either the business lobbyists can say, no, don't regulate us, we want to make lots of profits, or us, the citizen lobbyists, saying, yes, please do protect the 98% of the people.
I don't really get into agencies at all. I hold literally at the legislative branch. And one of the things I explain to people when I am teaching the course is every letter that you write to someone who is elected at any level of government begins as a voter in your district. So that reminds them, hi there, I can vote for you. Unless you are representing an organization where you have people living in a lot of districts where you are going directly to the committee of jurisdiction, which is fair. So a committee of jurisdiction is a fair target, even for people who are not constituents of the legislators on that committee. They really don't want you to know that, but they are fair game.
Great, thank you. And I think Ken and Catherine have just brought up a subject that I know is near and dear to the hearts of many of us in Elders Action Network, and that is civic education. I think I expressed my own civic education, which I thought was pretty good up until a couple of years ago. And I'm also feeling the need for ever more. So this is a topic that I think we'll come back to. But coming back to our speakers, we have about 10 more minutes and we have exhausted the questions in the chat. I wonder, are anyone out there, would anyone like to raise a question that you haven't heard? I believe if you raise your hand, that we will see you. And Crystal is going to help me make sure we don't miss somebody. Raise your hand or raise your voice.
Catherine raised her hand.
Catherine, I'm not seeing her. Crystal, can you help?
Yeah, I just wanted to, I have one more question since Ken and
Great.
I put those questions in the chat. Are you making that information available via the Workers Circle?
Every month we do a different topic. If you just want the federal civics course, email me and then we'll set up a time and I'll just do the course. We are doing individual bills at the Workers Circle.
Okay.
Right.
And if you need, Ken and Catherine, let me know if you need to be put directly in touch with Andrea Miller and the Center for Common Ground.
Yes, I definitely like that. Thanks.
Okay,
Yes, me too.
let's do that.
Okay.
Okay.
And I mentioned I have state impact presentations on the big fugly bill for about 10 states.
Do you have it for California,
No,
Wisconsin?
yes,
Okay.
yes,
Arizona?
yes. There are 52 congressional districts in California. I thought I was going to die doing the 28 in Florida.
Okay, we would appreciate knowing, Andrea, what are your 10 states?
All right, I will get them in the chat for you.
Oh, perfect.
Virginia, North Carolina, South Carolina, Georgia, Florida, Tennessee, friend asked, Missouri, another friend asked, Idaho, a friend asked, New Jersey.
And you said
Uh,
Wisconsin.
yes, and Wisconsin. Yes,
Okay, so
because we have a group that wants to start a democracy center there.
and we have a team, a small but mighty team working in Wisconsin. So we'll
Yes.
have a few follow-ups
Yes,
here.
yes.
I
And
am
what
sure.
I do is I send you the link to the Canva presentation because it's evergreen. As we get new numbers from trusted sources, this is the number for this. We add it to the presentation.
Great. And
And we include all the links, or this is the origin of the source data that we use.
great. I want to ask Josie, whom people haven't met yet. I know she's one of your key people, Andrea, but she just put in the chat something very interesting. I'd like to ask Josie to talk about it. Many of us are familiar with, but I'd love to hear you explain about what it is, Josie. Souls to the Polls.
Yeah, they're the group in Wisconsin that we work with. I believe they're in Milwaukee.
In
Is that right?
Milwaukee.
Milwaukee.
Yes.
So during the Wisconsin Supreme Court election, we worked with them a lot.
Right.
And they're
Both
the
of them,
folks.
23 and 25.
Yeah. And they are obviously they do a lot. They also mobilize Black voters for Sunday voting, but also just voting in general in the community. And they are the ones that are looking to start a democracy center as well, in partnership with us.
Great. And could you talk a little bit about the situation for the New York City Democracy Center? Is that an ongoing center?
Yeah, they're an ongoing center. They work with residents in Amsterdam houses and in public housing development outside of Lincoln Center. And that's the majority of their work is. So they really only work in that community. It's a super hyper local
That's great.
campaign.
Good to know. Thank you. So we will be certainly working with both of you and sharing the information that you give us now. And over the next month, I'll be doing some bulletins to let and remind our elders that Bill McKibben is going to be helping the Environmental Voter Project make phone calls in the last few days before the election, and remind our voters and our elders how they can do something great with the Center for Common Ground because of who you're connecting us with and how you're helping us make a really big difference. Before we finish our panel part of our program, does anyone on our audience have a question that we should put to our panelists? I can't see any hands. Have I missed anything? Okay. In that case, let me thank our panelists and thank our partners, the Center for Common Ground, Andrea and Josie, who really is her right-hand person. And I also want to thank Sharon Siegel and the team at the Environmental Voter Project, and let you know that we are with you both for the next 6 weeks, and we'll be reminding our members, and I know Leslie will be reminding her members in the Elders Climate Action. But we will let you, we have a few little administrative details to clear up and let our people know about what's coming up. You're welcome to stay. You need not stay for that. So I want to thank you. And I want to thank especially Linda Warner, whom everyone in the Elders for Sound Democracy knows. She is our head of communications, and she's going to remind us about the kinds of things we have coming up. Linda? And by the way, we will be sending you a recording of the presentation parts of this meeting, and we'll be sharing with you the slides that both of our speakers made, and a reminder, get out there and work. Thank you. Thank you.